everybody to another webinar in the Lady Leaders series. Hard to say. I'm not even drinking yet. And I am joined by an incredibly amazing group of people. I've got my very own Brittany Lopez, who is my lead DA for my offices. She does all of our inventory control. We've got Nicole Novakowski. How'd I do?
That's perfect.
Awesome. Who is our own amazing Addison Killeen, his lead DA, who, by the way, just so you know, Nicole, he literally texted me and said, like, you run his world. You're amazing. Like, you're the reason he's awesome. So just so you know, we've got Jake Conway, the numbers guy of DSI DSN, who knows just so much about inventory. And then we actually happen to have Mark Costas kind of hanging out here as well. To kind of contribute as well. Sydney Banks is kind of Sydney Robinson, excuse me, is filling in. So Ashley could take a little bit of time off. So thank you so much, Sydney, for helping host this for us.
And it's Sydney's birthday, everybody. Happy
birthday! Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
26, baby.
Love it. Love it. So awesome. Well, I want to first just kind of go around to the two lead DAs, kind of give us a little bit of your background about where you've been, what you're doing now. Nicole, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Yep, I've been a lead assistant for about 7 years now. I've been at my current office with Addison for a little less than 2. And then for the other 5, I was at a multi-practice organization with 6 locations where I was in charge of ordering for all of those locations at the time.
Awesome. Great. Brittany?
Yeah, so I've been a dental assistant for about 9 years now. I've been with Dr. Kassmel for 7. And I've been the inventory control person here for the last 6 or so. Before I was in an ortho office where I did not do any ordering or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is kind of a broad topic. This is always a little bit tough for especially newer doctors to really figure out where to even start. So my thought process with the inventory and supply webinar was to give them more of a process of what we do. And I know for myself, when I was an associate, all I remember is like boxes coming in, the Shine rep coming in all the time and kind of schmoozing us and just dropping off a whole bunch of stuff and thinking like, wow, I love having all this supply. Now that I'm in the driver's seat of like owning an office, I recognize how deadly that was, and that just relying on my Shine rep was the worst of all things. And so I know that when I kind of moved into ownership, and especially when I joined DSI, what I recognized was that's never your best bet. And that it really all starts with forming a really good budget. And, Jake and I were actually just talking about that today. So Jake, you can lean in. What do you suggest for doctors when it comes to forming a budget? Where do you start with that?
So I hear a lot of docs make the mistake of using collection as your marker or your baseline for setting a budget. It's actually net production, because that's really what drives your ordering. And we suggest looking at your, we call it a rolling budget. So every 3 months, we suggest every quarter, but let's say you're in the middle of the quarter and you're establishing this new budgeting system. Look back your past 3 months and use the average net production as that number, and then set budgets accordingly. I always use a little bit of a buffer. So if you're running at, let's say 6% in supplies, and you want to get to 4.5, set it for 4, and let's see if we can get it down to 4.5 at some point. Build on that buffer so that we know if we overshoot just a little bit, we know we're still under that 5% threshold, which is acceptable. So using net production as the baseline, or the number used to establish these numbers, that's really the biggest mistake that I've seen made. If collection is off, that's a separate issue. If your collection is lagging, if you're not at 98, 99% collection every 3, 6, 9 months, when you look at your overall collection for the year, that's a separate issue. So net production as a marker.
Yeah, excuse me. The assumption has to be that you're above 97% production to collections ratio. If not, that whole sentiment does not work. You're going to find yourself way overspending and your overhead going up.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're giving your front desk these numbers and these budgets based on collection, if collection is lagging or too high, because some months, as you know, can be 117, 120% collection. If we're using collection as the marker, it can fluctuate so much. It can actually set our teams up for failure, because if we're giving them a number that is unattainable or too high or too low, whatever which way, in the course of a year, it actually doesn't make sense. So net production is a stabilizing number.
Right. And so the first thing, like when we're starting to figure out how to train our back office, front office with how to do supplies and inventory, setting that budget. And as we just heard, 90-day rolling net production, but always checking to ensure that collections is above. For me, it's always 98%, but yes, 97% is a good start. I want to kind of dive into, at that point, you two have your budget, starting with you, Brittany, give us a rundown when it comes to, you've now got this budget per month. Give us kind of a rundown of where do you go with that budget?
Okay, so once the budget is set for the month or for the 90 days, I do make sure I carve out an hour of focus time every other week. So I order bi-weekly. Because trying to order in between patients or while there's other stuff going on can lead to, over ordering, missing things, just it's not very productive. So I make sure once I set that focus time, I'm stocking all of our tip out bins, our shelves. We do like to keep all our inventory where you can actually see it, nothing hidden in cabinets, drawers, anything like that. We do keep a couple of our bigger items in a shed that we have just because it's our storage right now. So I kind of go through all of that, make sure everything's stocked and I can actually visualize everything. We do have a tip out or a whiteboard that I have the team members write down when something is low or something out of the norm that they need me to order. So I make sure and check that as well. And then I use a spreadsheet, our inventory spreadsheet that we have, where I can kind of price compare and see what vendors I can get our cheapest things from. When it comes to like disposables and gloves, I do try to go with the cheapest vendor at all times, just because we're not really using those, that we're throwing those away. And then after that, I just make sure I order enough for 2 to 3 weeks. I don't want to order in bulk or over order, just because you do that, I feel like you go through materials a lot more when you have more of it on hand. And then I order everything and then I make sure and enter those numbers in my spreadsheet right away. That way it can adjust the budget accordingly.
Awesome. Nicole, kind of run down your system for truly just the ordering portion.
Yep, pretty similar system with that. Keeping rooms stocked at all times is super key to efficient ordering. We also do the clear tip out bins and no doors on any cabinetry that are in our supplies room. So at a glance, you can kind of see what's low stock, what you need to get. But keeping the rooms stocked at that time is actually key, because otherwise, you can have a full supply room, but then you stock the rooms and you're out of luck after that. So we also have a spreadsheet. I keep a blank spreadsheet in the supply room for people, same kind of thing with the whiteboard, low on supply, they mark it down. And then at the end of the week, when I go to order, then I go through all the items that they've marked and see if we actually need them or if we don't, can we stretch it to the next month, or is this something that really needs to be ordered?
Yeah. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Brittany, you said something awesome there. Bulk versus ordering as needed. We've seen that time and time again with other offices where they think it makes sense, and it may make sense in the moment, but over the course of a year, it never pencils out. So to kind of piggyback off what you said in your actual system, which sounds like, Nicole, your system is very similar. And obviously I know both your numbers and you guys are both under 4% supplies. So this system works. Bulk ordering over the course of 12 months never works. So if there's one thing to take away from that segment is never bulk order.
Yeah, I love that. I feel the exact same way about bulk ordering, but I love the sentiment about being able to see all of your inventory at a glance all the time. And just, an insider's tip, if you guys are new to like true inventory control and you guys are new to really tracking this, 3.5 to 5% supply budget, if that's the case, you might be tempted to let your inventory deplete too much. Make sure that you're not, stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, right? So sometimes it takes a quarter to get this thing going, right? So what you don't want to do is say, you know what, it's going to be this month, I'm going to hit 3.5% no matter what. and then you run out of matrix bands, and then you can't do anything, and then you're not producing dentistry, right? So give yourself ample amount of time to get the system going. Give yourself 2 or 3 months to get the system going. Deplete all the inventory that you know, if you had a huge bulk order, deplete that as much as possible, but make sure that you have enough inventory to produce dentistry. Don't hit that number at the cost of, you know, not being able to do restorative dentistry.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds really obvious, but I've seen people do that before. And it's happened in my practices before. It's like, well, we hit our budget, but you know, we basically we shut down all fillings and crowns on the 26th.
Right.
But with that budget.
We did it, but we
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point.
And you know, like the thing that I heard through that, and obviously I knew the system was like, one, it is a true system. What seems, and we kind of discussed this before we started, like what seems pretty just like a course to us, for people kind of stepping into these shoes, I think it's not necessarily something they know. And the first thing I heard is ensuring, you know, you're not ordering every single day if possible. Because if you're ordering every single day, something may be going wrong. And so really spending that time, you know, weekly checking everything. And for us, it's that we just order bi-weekly. And that's merely because if you're ordering constantly nonstop, your shipping costs, when I averaged it out, the shipping costs alone can actually average thousands of dollars per year. And so for us, it's really important that we keep about 2 weeks stock all the time. But I guess when I was listening to that, what I was thinking through was, the first thing is there is a system, which by the way, we're going to have Sydney include that on our system is actually written out. Brittany and I really made sure that we had that. So we're going to put that on the little notes with this webinar for everybody that is really going to break this down. But first thing is have a system, have a budget, and then ensure that there's time per week to dedicate it to it. That's one other thing that I find that, you know, when you're not busy and there's holes in the schedule, I find it works fine to order in between patients. But the minute you start filling those time units, it's really hard on assistants, I think, to try to fit things in between patients. And I just found that often that's where Brittany, you know, years ago was going awry. Nicole, I don't know about you, but trying
Definitely.
to fit stuff in between patients was really tough. So focus time per week, every week is really important, in my opinion. Having things out in the open. And I know in the beginning, before we had all our clear tip out bins, all we did was just take the cabinet doors off. Not real cool, not real sexy looking, but what it did do was allow Brittany to see everything out on the shelves. So she knew before she ordered everything we had. It's kind of like, you know, when you like buy too many things at the grocery store and you stock them in your pantry and you can't see them in the back. I find that like that's what happens with supply. So the other thing I heard was like making sure you can see everything, making sure there's a cadence of ordering, a dedicated focus time. And then along with that is, you know, really ensuring that you stick to the budget, you know what you're ordering, but not at the cost of obviously being able to do production. Was there anything else just like for people listening?
I had a question for both of you, awesome assistants here. With usage, what do you guys see? Like, do you monitor that? Like, kind of run through how you guys track usage and how important that is to obviously the ordering process itself.
Well, I know for at our office, we've got everything down to cotton roll per procedure. Like we have everything. Okay, this is how much heavy body we're using per procedure. So you can kind of figure out, you know, look your schedule for the next few weeks and see what you have coming up, you know, like about what you're going to use coming up.
Ours is
So you guys broke it down per procedure?
Per procedure, yep. We marked on the heavy body how many we used each time we did a crown, and it just kind of, we figured it out from there, like for everything.
The hardest thing for us when we were doing that was prime and bond. How did you guys figure out how many drops of prime and bond?
You know, Addison did figure that out, but it was like 100 and something, yeah, drops per bottle. I don't know if he averaged or what, but.
Yeah, it is. It's like you have to almost sacrifice. It's like, okay, I'm gonna sit here for the next 15 minutes, take a fresh bottle and sacrifice the fresh bottle and count the drops until it's empty.
It was an overtime experience. We didn't waste anything, you know, waste not, want not, but it was overtime. Okay, this is how many we use per procedure and about how long it lasted us, but.
We pretty much do the same thing. You know, we have procedure checklists that we do write a number like 2 2x2s, 1 cotton roll, like we made sure to let everybody know, whether you're new or not, like there's a number and a science to it. If you drop gloves on the floor, don't throw them away, put them in the sterile room to use, just being really cognizant of, not wasting anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was gonna say we're the exact same way. Like, truly, I don't know about you, Nicole, but sometimes we'll drop gloves on the floor and we're like, don't throw those away.
They're for clean
Especially
with them.
Exactly.
like 5 times
Yep.
the cost.
Yeah, gloves are insane right now. Don't.
Sorry, I feel like the music just keeps getting louder behind us. Are you guys able to hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So good. I'm glad it's just on here. All right.
We're at a club. Yeah.
It sounds like
Day club. It's a great day club.
day club for the 40+ crowd.
We'll be in bed by 7.
Well, one thing I heard too is like you guys both use spreadsheets. Tell for everybody listening, what do those spreadsheets look like? Like, who's your vendors? Who are on those spreadsheets that you kind of consistently use to compare with? And do you use something like a Dentira, a Zen, or have you both just kind of figured out more so how to utilize just spreadsheets and the same kind of vendors every time?
We used to use Zen quite a while ago, but with COVID and shipping and things, we kind of just have now gone straight to a spreadsheet, which I really love because the way we have it calculated is every time we enter a price from our vendors, it automatically deducts from our budget. So every time, whether it be a doctor or somebody else who wants to order something, they can see how much we have remaining for that month and knowing is it actually important or can it wait till next order or next month. When it comes to the vendors though, we have it pretty dialed in for the most part. Net32 is a huge one we use for disposables. Dental City is one we use, Darby, and Dental Health Products is another big one we use pretty consistently.
Yeah, Nicole?
Same thing. We used to use Zen as well. We found that their prices weren't updated automatically and you always weren't getting the best price. So we stopped using them. We're now just using the spreadsheet with just our main vendors on their pricing and SKUs. I try to find the manufacturer code rather than the SKU per vendor, because then if you type that in, it's across the board, same thing. Rather than getting the SKUs for every single item for every single vendor. But yeah, same thing. We use Net32 for a lot of our disposables, and Darby is our main supplier for everything else, really. A couple just random ones for, certain things, but we usually do Darby and Net32 is where we'll see most.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I should ask you too, what do you say to the doctors who are really scared about utilizing, a non-Patterson Shine company for their stuff? Because I do hear that all the time. Are you scared about the quality? Aren't you scared about white label, gray label? Have you ladies heard that too?
Absolutely.
We've had doctors pick with me who.
Are you talking about kind of from an associate level or doctors that we're speaking to right now?
Doctors we're speaking to right now who might be worried about, like, I've always used Shine, I've always used Patterson. Like, what about using some of these companies?
Right. I mean, I've been all the way through this journey, and I will say that just kind of like in the grocery store, I don't think that a lot of times there is a benefit to ordering a name brand. And you guys have to also be aware, just like in the grocery store, that the major providers or the major supply houses often get their generic brands fabricated at the same places that fabricate kind of the name brands. So my advice to people is certain things like impression material, bond, temporary material, temporary cement, sealer, those sorts of things, for me, I go with the best, right? And we make up for all of the other stuff with disposables. So you have to pick your battles, right? It's like, I mean, how attached are you to those cotton rolls, right? So if you can pick up a few percentage points on the cotton rolls, then you can afford your more expensive impression material and prime and bond and that sort of thing. So I would say pick your battles, figure out which disposables you're kind of agnostic about, and really focus on those and bring those down as much as you can. There are several things like patient bibs and stuff like that really doesn't matter what name brand you have, but there could be a huge difference in price if you go generic. So that's my main kind of advice when it comes to that. When we're talking to our associates and they absolutely demand something, we're cool with that. But what we say is, here's our budget on that, and then it just gets really, really complicated. It's much easier for labs, but we say, here's our budget on that. If you insist on that, we'll pay for this specific material at what we're using for every other associate, and then you make up the difference for that particular supply. And for labs, we do the same thing. So if somebody insists that they need a $360 crown, zirconia crown, and we're paying $55 through DDS, we'll pay $55. They just owe me $305 on the lab.
So what do you guys find, your reliance is on some of those big name brands, Shine, Patterson, Nicole, what do you find is your reliance on some of those bigger companies?
I can tell you, I think I ordered 2 items consistently from Henry Schein, and that's really about it. And at the previous practice, that's all we were using in the beginning, relying heavily on the rep, just like you said. Never really even thought about negotiating prices, especially for equipment. I was way in over my head when we first started with all of this stuff, but you come to find that there's a little negotiation with everything, especially big stuff. So yeah, very little reliance on the big name.
I think thank you, Nicole. It's definitely worth noting that people don't recognize how much margin there are in disposables and name brand stuff and even equipment. So everybody has to know that if a supply house has a certain price that they're selling to a massive DSO, you can get close to that. And if you are paying 35% higher than the DSO down the street is paying, the rep at the DSO level is still making money 35% less than they're charging you. So you have a little bit of leverage, especially if you utilize, DSN, because we have, over 1,000 practices and we're able to negotiate on your behalf.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of emerged here was you mentioned segmenting disposables versus composite material and that sort of thing. Like, we kind of skipped over the fact that proper allocation is a huge thing too. Making sure that you're pulling out some of these specialty procedures like Invisalign and maybe some of these implant materials, because really that should go to a lab and specialty category. It doesn't inflate your supplies unnecessarily. I mean, looking at supplies in lab is good to look at, 11.5 to 12% is a good number for that. But looking at dental supplies specifically, making sure we're allocating appropriately to make sure our budgeting, for one, is set appropriately, but two, that way we're being fair to the process itself, right? And making sure that we're accounting, just like marketing. If we're over budget in marketing, we're accounting for some things that really aren't marketing. We're doing our budgeting process a disservice. So that's one thing to highlight as you're moving through this process.
Yeah, sure. I might come back to that actually, but Brittany, what do you see our reliances on, like Shine or whatever?
We use Shine very little, and when we do have to use them, I make a point to make sure we're still getting our discounts and our shipping prices and reaching out to the rep to make sure that happens, but it's very little that we use Shine.
Yeah. And I would say
really the only big name brand one we use.
Brittany, that highlights a really, really good point that I'm going to let you expand upon is, what do you find happens with some of these bigger name companies? They're not, when you unpack it, when you take out the invoices of your inventory and you look at those big companies, invoices, and when you get the invoice, what do you see keeps happening? That if you're not careful, what happens?
Those numbers inch back up. We don't get the prices that we negotiated. We don't get the shipping prices that we needed. And if you're not constantly checking that, they'll try and get you that way.
Yeah. Like, I feel like, Brittany, do you think that's something like monthly you are contacting the rep about?
Oh yeah, I try to do it on my off order days. So I do that bi-weekly too.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it doesn't go too long or something doesn't get missed.
Yeah. So for the record, interesting story. I have a friend in Denver who owns 5 offices. Him not watching this, over the course of 1 year, 5 offices, it was over $70,000. of mishandling of all those invoices.
But it's an honest mistake, you know, I mean, things happen.
Things happen. Yeah, it's weird. Well,
Supply doesn't matter. Supply
Yeah.
budget doesn't matter.
yes.
Oh my God.
So that leads to a beautiful point, Brittany, of really using the off weeks that you're not ordering to really check your invoices, check the shipping, check that the prices that you were said you were going to get are the ones that you get. And maybe like with both of you, what you were saying is get away from some of the name brand companies, especially with disposables, especially with gloves, and start to actually utilize some of the other companies that we just listed. I think Brittany said she would share her spreadsheet with viewers too of, you know, all the companies we use for things, so people can kind of see how Brittany structures her ordering as well. But you know, to go back to Jake's point, both of you have doctors in your practice that do specialty procedures. So Jake, if you want to actually, do you have any more to kind of shed light on? Because I know there's a lot of doctors out there that probably do implants, a lot of those big things. I find all the time on calls I take, where does that get allocated?
So first, I would start, if you're going through this for the first time, identify the higher level percentages and then move down from there like a funnel, right? So if you identify that lab and supplies together are over that 11.5 to 12%, let's find out exactly what that looks like. I guess to further go down that rabbit hole, do you want to go down this further?
No, we were laughing at how noisy it is.
Oh, it's super noisy. I can't really concentrate. So, I mean, really how we allocate or how we categorize our expenses, we call it lab/specialty and DSI, custom practice analytics. And that really, it's all obviously your lab, traditional lab, but Invisalign, implants, let's see, any ortho you're doing, I guess that's really about it. I can't think of anything more off the top of my head. Do you have any to add?
No.
Okay.
That's
So we allocate that to actually lab/specialty because we want to see exactly what the supply budget actually holds month to month. And to make sure we're getting an accurate account of our dental supply usage and spending habits. That's really the biggest thing. What are our spending habits in that category? And if you're improperly categorizing, we really can't get an idea. Like we mentioned earlier, if we give a budget to our assistants based on those numbers and they're not hitting that consistently, we're setting them up for failure, you know, because it's inflated unnecessarily. So that's what we discovered over the past few years.
Yeah. So Nicole, how do you know, obviously I know your practice, you have some pretty big specialty services there. How do you do anything different with ordering, or do you have that in a separate spreadsheet?
It is. Yep. It's all separate. So we have a sedation and medication and surgery supplies budget that we use separately from the actual dental supplies. So it's all different.
Yeah. Brittany?
We keep ours separate too. I make sure it's like its own little tab. That way I can monitor that as well.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that's actually a huge point to highlight, is ensuring that those two are kind of separate from each other. And, you know, in our practice too, we do a lot of orthos. So like having a GP kind of side versus specialty spreadsheets, I think is really important, just to get an understanding of, is an ROI there on those specialty services too? Because, you know, I was just talking to an office this morning where she's committing a lot of resources, time, money, CE towards bringing implants into the practice. And she's like, gosh, my overhead is so inflated right now. And I said, and that's no problem. Everybody understands that. But what you want to see over the next 90 days is it actually making sense? And are the prices you're paying, you're starting to see the return on that huge investment of resources. So I think that's a huge point as well. Once you guys get your orders in, though, we kind of alluded to this. So you've ordered everything well, you're kind of within your budget. I know it sounds crazy, but when you're unpacking everything, you're putting everything on the shelves, you know, you're talking to your team members about, you know, what just came in, anything that, you know, doctors need to know about sometimes these new DAs who are taking over that responsibility when it comes to unpacking shipments, looking through invoices, things like that. Nicole?
Yeah, I feel like that's my biggest struggle because I'm rarely the person that is unpacking it. We have two sterile techs that usually are the ones putting everything away, and I think that's our biggest, like, our flaw there is I don't really know what's missing from the order until days after, or what didn't come, or what's on back order. So yes, I'm keeping track of what I've already ordered. I'm expecting it to come, but did it actually is my biggest thing.
Yeah. Do you see a way to improve that?
So I have a folder system. Basically, I have open invoices, closed invoices. If there's anything missing from our orders, I have them highlight and let me know what's going on with that. So I can check it and I don't have to be in constant communication with them, right when the order comes in. I can check it, later on in the day when I have time. And then I can actually follow up on those missing items or back ordered items.
Brittany?
Well, I'm a control freak, so I open my own boxes all the time to try to avoid any, it's just harder, I feel like, when more hands are in the pot. But if for some reason I'm not around, I do let the other DAs know, like, when there is a packing slip, you do have to check off what came in and highlight what didn't, so that next time I am in the office, I can call up and kind of just check in on that and see what's here, what didn't come, things like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that seems so perfunctory, but for new doctors, new DAs, I actually think it's really important to highlight that even if there's just two DAs in the practice, the other one may be opening the packages, but it's really important that if nobody's actually paying attention to what's shipped, often I find that things are missing. The other thing that I see is if there's free goods that were supposed to be shipped, often those don't show up in the original package. They're going to show up later down the line. And if you don't keep tabs on it, those free goods either never show up unless you actually hunt them down. Same thing with redemption offers. Like if you happen to use Shine for some of those, composites, things like that, it's really important if you aren't paying attention to the redemption items there, they will never send them. Your rep's not going to say that you bought the 3 things of composite, you get 2 free. They're not going to find those for you. So I don't know if you guys have anything else to address with that for doctors who maybe don't know, but
with the redemptions and stuff.
Yeah, redemptions, free goods, anything like that. That when it comes to unpacking orders,
I think just it's more of a process than, like you said, just opening it and putting it away. Like a lot of times things do go missing, or you don't get those free goods for 3 months and people are like, oh, cool, free composite. Like you do have to constantly keep tabs on it and make sure you have that running list of what redemption offers you need to call in on or free goods to get.
Nicole, anything else?
Yeah, there's definitely a follow-up process with all of that stuff. I'm not a plug for Darby or anything, but they do have you select things like right on your order, so you know exactly what your free goods should be. So you don't actually have to, call in the manufacturer or do any of that on the back end, which is super nice. But any other vendor is going to have you jump through some hoops for those free goods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just a heads up, because once again, over the course of a year, all those free goods, all those instruments that you're supposed to get, gosh, that's thousands of dollars again, that if you're not paying attention. And yes, really good to know too, Nicole. Like with Darby, you can actually pick your own stuff on the website and they'll just send it. That's good to know.
That stupid mail-in rebate that you always get.
Yeah, the mail-in rebate. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, to kind of wrap things up, because we went through the supply, we went through the ordering process, which we're going to post our own kind of system, Britt. You're going to post, or Sydney will help post your spreadsheet that you use to order. We kind of talked about unpacking and actually how important that process is for DAs in the office. The last thing I kind of want to ask is, being in you guys' shoes, what do you wish doctors listening or team members would know about, what's kind of the hardest part about your job and what you're doing?
Well, I definitely don't think there's an easy button where you can just order whenever and whatever. There is a process to knowing, behind what gets ordered and how much. You can't just willy-nilly get a huge stock of stuff just because we want it or we need it. There is a thought process that goes behind it. It's not just me being a control freak, making sure, and it's not no, I'm not going to order it. Maybe it's better next month or the following order. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And I think every in the beginning, every time we had a team meeting, it was me just following up with the team, kind of explaining why I order the way I order, or like if there's no communication, it is a team effort. It isn't just the person who's ordering. I think everybody should know kind of what our budget is and how to keep our overhead low. And I think if no one understands the why, or, you know, kind of helps bring that together, then no one's going to really care as much.
That's super, super good for doctors to know too. That's really helpful. And any associate doctors that are listening too. Like, ordering is actually, in really great offices that follow a process, there is a process and there's thought put behind it. And that it's not just no for the reason of no, it's no for a reason of, I thought this budget and I'm really trying to make sure that it makes sense. And that I'm a small part of the bigger part of overhead. Yeah, I think that's awesome, Brittany. And like you said, that's such a good point, Brittany. And I didn't think about that you really did, when you took it over, you spent so many months working with the team as to why you were doing what you were doing and why you were acting the way you were acting. And here's what I'm trying to accomplish and I need your help. That's really good. Yeah, Nicole?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up. Same type of thing. It's rarely ever, no, I'm not going to order that. I'm not going to order that right now. Like in the future, yes, we can budget for this and I can plan on, you know, allocating that for this next thing that your wish list items. But is it actually necessary at this time is the biggest thing I'd like to have understanding about.
We do have a question from.
2 days are like, yes.
So we do have a question from an attendee. It says, did you say that Dentera does not update their pricing promptly?
I don't know about Dentera.
Zen has more of a manual process. Dentera is done automatically.
Right.
So Dentera updates all of its prices in real time.
Yeah. And I do know, I mean, I don't know enough about Dentera. I know a lot of masterminders have really used them, loved them. I've kind of talked to Addison. Him and I know we're kind of talking about it. I will say that we're fortunate that, you know, our DAs are pretty.
You have a system that's working.
Pretty amazing, yeah. That they're both really able to keep it under 4%. But I know for other offices, Dentera works great. So, yeah. And I think Zen can work great for people too. Yeah. So, our system of mostly spreadsheet based, I think, works for us. So, yeah. All right. Any other final comments from anybody?
No. Thanks, you guys, for letting me pop in.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Sydney. Happy birthday, Sydney. Happy birthday.
Thank you guys. I wish I was there with you guys, but thank
you
all.
do. Yeah, you do. Thank you for allowing the men to infiltrate the lady leaders group here. It's awesome.
Well, Brittany, for a hot minute, thought it was just going to be her, and she was like,
I panicked just a little.
She had her baby like just this week, and Kylie was like, I can't make it, and Brittany was like, it's fine.
I'll throw a PowerPoint together really quick.
We're doing
That's
so.
awesome.
You're amazing. I just want you guys both to know, like, truly, and recognize you both. Like, you guys are amazing DAs who, like, gosh, I wish everybody could plug into you and, you know, just share like the wisdom of your brains, because both of you are so amazing. And I'm really grateful that you both took the time to come on and do this, because I'm certain that there is a lot of doctors and team members out there that got benefit from it. So thank you so very much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. All
Great.
right.
So I will be emailing everyone those spreadsheets. If you're in DSN, I did post one of those. And if you do not see it, I'll be happy to send that to you. But thank you guys for attending, and look out for those emails.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.